welcome back to our Bible Heroes series. I hope that you had a great day yesterday and you're enjoying half term, and I hope that you enjoyed making all of your crafts and doing your activities yesterday. Yesterday we talked about Samson and how he had super strength. God gave him the power to be strong. And God gives each one of us different strengths and abilities, and He wants us to use them to help other people. Today's story is all about a person who became king, but he started off in a completely different job. Before we get started, let's hear your family's chant. Can you remember it from yesterday? 1, 2, 3. Very good. It's great to have you back. Let's start with a little quiz. I want you can either write down your answers or you can say them out loud, and we'll do 5 questions, and then I'll give you the answers and we'll see how many you got right. And these questions are all about heroes. Question number 1. Superman is from what planet? What planet is Superman from? Question number 2. How did Spider-Man get his superpowers? Question 3. Which superhero changes colour? Question number 4. Which superhero has an assistant called Robin? And question number 5 might be a little bit difficult. Princess Diana from Themyscira is a superhero. What is she known as? Okay, let's go through those answers. So, number 1, Superman is from Krypton. Number 2, Spider-Man got his superpowers by being bitten by a spider. It was a radioactive spider, not an ordinary one. Number 3, the superhero that changes colour is the Incredible Hulk or Bruce Banner. Question number 4, the assistant that Robin is the assistant of Batman. And number 5, Princess Diana is known as Wonder Woman. She's one of my favourites. Today we're looking at a king, or a boy who became a king. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not great at sports. I was never good at sports. And the one thing that I hated most of all about PE lessons or being in the park was when people were chosen as captains and you all line up waiting to be chosen for a team. I was more often than not the last one to be chosen because people knew I wasn't very good at sports. I wasn't the tallest, I wasn't the smallest, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the fastest. But I had a lot of heart and I knew I could do the job if someone just chose me. And that's okay because I have other skills. In our Bible story today, God has decided to choose a new king for Israel. He told the prophet Samuel to go to Bethlehem to the house of Jesse, because that's where the new king is going to be. I'm going to be reading the story from the Jesus Storybook Bible, and you can follow along if you have that version, and it's on page 116, I think. The teeny weeny true king. God's people had a new land. Now they wanted a king. But God is your king, Samuel told them. He's the one who looks after you best. We want a real king, they said. One that we can see. God knew that a king might not be kind to his people and look after them as well as he could, but God's people didn't care. They wanted a king, and they wanted him now. So God gave them a king. He called Saul, and he seemed like a good king at first. But he became proud and stopped listening to God. He didn't obey God or love God with his whole heart. Saul can't help me with my plan, God said. I need a king who loves me and will teach my people to love me too. I need a true king. God had just the one in mind. Go to Bethlehem, God told Samuel. You'll find the new king there. Samuel's job was to listen to God and tell people what God said. So Samuel went to the little town of Bethlehem. God told Samuel to go to Jesse's house. God was going to choose one of Jesse's sons to be the new king. Jesse had 7 sons. Now, in those days, if you were going to be the king, you didn't have to be the richest or the cleverest, although that was always nice. You had to look like a king, which meant you had to be the tallest and the strongest, so you could carry the longest swords and the biggest armour and defeat everyone. And it didn't hurt to be handsome either. Samuel asked Jesse to bring out each son in turn. So Jesse brought the oldest, tallest, strongest son. This must be the new king, Samuel thought. He looks like a king. But God didn't choose him. You're thinking about what he looks like on the outside, God told Samuel, but I'm looking at his heart, what he's like on the inside. So Jesse showed Samuel his newest, oldest, tallest, strongest son. But God didn't choose him either. In fact, God didn't choose any of the 7 sons. Samuel said, "Is that all?" Jesse laughed. "Well, there's the youngest one, but he's just a weakling. He's only teeny." "Bring him," said Samuel. Jesse's youngest son came running up, and God spoke quietly to Samuel. "This is the one." His name was David. "He has a heart like mine," God said. "It's full of love. He will help me with my rescue plan, and one of his children's children will be the king. And that king will rule the world forever." Samuel anointed David's head with oil, which was a special way to show that you're the God's chosen king. "You will be new king one day," Samuel told him. And sure enough, when he grew up, David became king. God chose David to be king because God was getting ready, his people ready for an even greater king who was coming. So the most important bit of that story is when God says people look at the outward appearance, but God looks at what's on the inside. He wasn't the oldest, he wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the strongest, he was only a shepherd boy. Looked after sheep like this one, although probably a little bit bigger and a little bit more realistic. He was only a shepherd boy. But when God looked at David, he saw a king. Why? Because God doesn't look at the outward appearance. God looks at the heart. Sometimes you may think that you're too young to do anything important. But God looks at what's on the inside of you and loves you no matter what. No matter what you look like. We're going to pause for a moment to do an activity that's going to come up on the screen, and then we'll come back and we'll finish the story. Some very exciting things happen to David when he's a little bit older. See you in a bit. How small are you? Are you smaller than a tree? Are you the smallest in your family? This is a true story from the Bible about someone very small who fought a very big giant because he knew that God is the greatest. I hope that reading this book or hearing this book will help you know that God is great. Greater than any scary giant, in fact, the greatest in the whole wide world. Goliath was tall. He was taller than all of the other Philistines. He was the tallest soldier in their army. Goliath stood and roared at God's people. Pick someone to come and fight me. God's people were scared. They were scareder of Goliath than anyone else. They were the scaredest they'd ever been. David was small. He was smaller than his brothers. He was the smallest in all his family. But David knew that God was great. God was greater than Goliath. God was the greatest in the whole wide world. David said to the king, I'll go fight Goliath. The king said, But you're young, younger than anyone else, the youngest person here. How can you fight a giant? But David said, I may be little, littler, littlest, but I know that God is big, bigger, biggest. So the king said, Go, and may the Lord be with you. David had no armour. David carried no sword. Instead, he took 5 smooth pebbles from the stream to put in his shepherd's sling. With it, he could throw a stone faster than the wind. Even the very big giant saw little David and laughed. David said, You come to me with a spear and a sword, and I come to you in the name of the Lord. And when the fight is over, everyone will know that God is great. God is greater than anyone else. God is the greatest in the whole wide world because you will be dead. The giant snarled and charged. He trusted his armour and his spear and his sword. David moved forward. He trusted the Lord. David took one of the 5 stones and put it in his sling. He whirled it around his head, faster than the wind, the fastest he could whirl it. Smack! The giant fell to the ground. He was dead. Deader than a dinosaur. The deadest anyone can be. When the Philistines saw that Goliath was dead, they fled, and everyone knew that God is great. God is greater than anyone else. God is the greatest in the whole wide world. That's how the story of David carries on. It was started as a shepherd boy, and he turned into a warrior. Even the king didn't think he could do it because he was little. He was young. He wasn't really anything special. But God gave him a different job. God saw everything that he could do. When God looked at David, he saw a king. I wonder what you see when you look in the mirror. I wonder what God sees when he looks at you. We're going to do something a little bit different. What I'd like you to do is we're going to practice something that requires a little bit of imagination and concentration. So I'd like you to sit comfortably, have your back straight, shoulders relaxed, and your feet on the floor. Close your eyes and remember the colour of the sky on a bright, clear, sunlit day. Think of the sun travelling across the sky, turning the sky through all different shades of blue. It starts with the deepest blue, studded with stars and perhaps a round, pale, glowing moon. As the sky begins to lighten, the grey of twilight creeps over the horizon and making everything seem black and white. But the sun begins to rise and the sky loses its pink tinge and starts to turns a beautiful translucent blue. Imagine yourself on such a day setting out for a walk. You feel the comfortable warmth of the sun on your back and a gentle breeze playing around your face. It's spring and you walk towards the countryside. As you walk, you meet the person you know and trust the best in the world. Imagine them clearly. This person will be your guide. Your guide takes you by the hand. Feel the warmth and reassurance of that hand holding yours and walk willingly with your guide. You walk along a riverbank. The grass is springy and green and fragrant. It has the freshness of the morning, but is not damp. The river is clean and glitters. It flows its path lazily and calmly. Think about the creatures that depend on the meadow and the river, the insects, the birds, the mammals that live there. What sounds do you hear as you walk along? What scents do you sniff along the riverbank? Enjoy your walk with your guide. As you continue to walk, you notice the sky beginning to darken. The banks of the river steepen and the water takes on a dull grey colour of the clouds overhead. The path continues by the river, but cliffs begin to rise on the other side. The soft grass gives way to jagged stones, which are difficult to walk over and shift and slip and uneasy when you put your weight on them. As the sky becomes heavy with clouds and prickles with the threat of a storm, the cliff rises beside you. You feel shut in and oppressed. You grip your guide's hand more tightly and are answered with the warm, comforting pressure of their hand. As you feel more and more threatened, you lean on your guide's arm and find it strong, reassuring, dependable. You look at your guide's face and realise nothing can harm you while you're in their presence. You gain strength and renewal from this realisation. Eventually, the path evens out. Your feet find firmer ground and your walking becomes easier. The sky brightens with the evening light. You see the most marvellous building in the distance. Imagine what it looks like. What What size is it? What is it made from? What colour is it? As you get closer, you realise that your guide is leading you to that place. This is how, think about the details of doors and windows and gardens becoming clearer and clearer. There is a warm and welcoming light at the windows, and you reach the door as the first few stars appear in the sky above you. Your guide leads you inside and welcomes you. There's a bright fire to warm yourself by, and the table is prepared for a meal. Your favourite food and drink is on the table. Imagine what it looks like and smells like. Your guide invites you to sit and eat. You find that there are friends here. Take a while to enjoy the feast. You know that you're welcome to stay as long as you wish, even if you leave this place for a while. In some way, you'll be able to come back, to be able to take the feeling that you have with you. Now we need to return to our room. So get up from the feast and look out of the window. Watch the night sky slowly turn to grey twilight and the sun begin to rise once more. See how the sky looks like polished metal as it turns a pearly gold, then pink, and finally a translucent powder blue. When you're ready, open your eyes and have a stretch. God told David that he was his shepherd. God looks after us no matter what. I hope that you have a fantastic day today, the rest of the day, whatever you're doing, whether you're playing outside or inside, whether you've got schoolwork, homework to do, probably not. Whatever you do, I hope you have a fantastic day and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.